Bam. I think we're good here. All right, what's going on? We got what's up, Monk? What's up, Big Joe? Happy 420. I don't partake in the marijuana, so that's gonna fall on deaf ears. It's funny, I didn't realize it was 420 until earlier. I had a couple of coaching sessions this morning. One of the guys said, I guess everybody's going to get high today. And I don't know what the fuck that means. I'll be consuming copious amounts of caffeine. That's about it. So a little bit of background on what's going on in general in terms of TRIBALNOMICS, what I'm doing, the project, and what this live stream is about. Pretty much a last second thing. I am trying to create more content that is relevant to the people through YouTube without necessarily getting my YouTube channel crushed. And that is not as easy as one would think when you deal with the content that I do. I'm always talking to my guys that have, YouTube identities and pages and are doing well in various amounts of social media content in different directions. And my, especially any business groups that I'm a part of, even I've had business coaches in different specific things over the years, as I am also a coach for other people. One of the things that I always have an issue with is I'm usually like Godzilla walking through the city when it comes to discussing how to leverage my content on social media today. So right now I was making and I will continue to make those videos, those longer form videos where they're, I have the fancy editing and all that on-screen graphics and stuff. But one of the things that I found was a lot of times I want to talk about a topic that is time sensitive, that's time relevant at least. And when I record it, I make the outline because I don't script anything. At most, I do an outline. Like today, I literally have a whiteboard to write down notes in case I want to talk about something specifically or come back to it. But I have my outline on a relevant topic. I record the video, and I actually send it off to an editor. But I don't get it back for 2-3 days after that. And for 2-3 days, when it comes back, a lot of times it's not as relevant. So I want to talk about things in the moment, and doing those things, just me being able to use an editor, a professional editing service, it's just not in the cards right now. And I will learn how to edit videos at some point to a somewhat presentable level. I know how to do it now, to a very functional level. If you look at my squat videos, that's me editing on my phone, usually in the car when I left the gym. But the whole point of this whole fucking thing is I want to be able to come and do live streams because this is what I'm used to. This is what, I usually have the most fun doing, and I get to be myself, to the biggest degree. Keto Thor in the house. What's going on, brother, man? No Name. What up? Steve Grady. What up? So right now, just to give you guys some insight as to what's going on, I am using a Canon, what is this, an M50? That is my camera. I am using a Rode Video Mic Go 2. That's the shotgun mic I have. Let me do something that's probably not professional, just to show you. I got that fanciness, right? So that's the Rode Video Mic Go 2. I am using StreamYard software to do the live stream. I don't think I've ever used StreamYard before. I was watching another video and somebody was shilling for it. And, and I said, all right, let me see what this is about, because I know how to use OBS Studio. I know how to use, just the native interface with YouTube itself. But, I figured, this is a dedicated service. So I did it. I looked, it seemed like a good idea. I paid for the year. So this is me trying to use the software now that I joined maybe 20 minutes ago, to be completely honest, as I do. So I appreciate you guys being here. Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk about today, let me make sure that this is visible. that I wanted to make sure today, and I'm going to be looking here. Like I have I think it's a 40-inch screen, like one of those ultra wide screen monitors. So, on my Zoom calls, I do my best with my coaching students to put like their face like right behind my camera, so it looks like I'm looking at them. But right now, this is me looking at the camera. Right now, I have so many fucking things I'm figuring out. I don't want it to be too much of a distraction by doing it while also simultaneously making sure I'm looking at the camera. So you guys understand I am with you, but I am figuring some shit out because we definitely have some stuff to talk about. Now, first off, those of you watching live, some of you guys that'll be watching this later on, because I'm pretty sure, although not 100% sure, that this gets archived onto the page, so people will be watching it later. If you are not on my email newsletter at masterchim.com, I cannot be more forceful with my suggestion that you do so. If you enjoy my content. If you don't enjoy what I talk about, then you should just fucking stop watching now, I guess, whatever. The subscribing to the channel, liking the video, like, do it, don't do it. I mean, ultimately, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. The way that I've always approached things is if things are productive and things are valuable, everything else will sort itself out. So I really just want to dedicate the most time that I'm being productive to just being me and not trying to play games that are just, significantly offset from who I am and my workflow, more logistically speaking. So all that being said, celebrate weakness, mask free, like the good slave you are. So we had a judge the other day overturn the federal mask mandate, or I think it was the federally supported mask mandate. But basically, the mandate that was happening on planes was the big thing where it was affected. And there were all these videos, these what I would call cringeworthy, but ultimately were meant to be, intended to be, these feel-good videos where everybody's clapping because they don't have to wear a mask anymore. And, sometimes I'll be honest, I have reactions to seeing other people do things that is so just in the 180 degrees the other direction that I have trained myself to sit down and go, okay, Justin, is this you? Like, are you being unreasonable right now? Are you being a bit much? Are you, are you going Godzilla right now on this situation? And, most of the time, no. Most of the time, upon further reflection, I'm like, yeah, fuck those people. And this is one of those times. I was just so annoyed. And again, I will be honest, I do my best on a daily basis to build a deeper, better relationship with the emotional dynamic of dealing with my life and my control and influence over it, right? If I'm going to turn into the Hulk, let it be that Hulk that was sort of in control of his mind. You know what I mean? I'm not, trying to be anybody else. I'm certainly not going to change, who the fuck I am, for anybody. But I also want to make sure that I'm acting in a way that is congruent with the outcome that I'm designing. So what is it that I'm talking about? Specifically, these fucking people on these planes who are celebrating, it was just so fucking cringy. You don't have to wear your mask anymore. There was one video where the captain, all fucking corny and smug, is like, just want to let you know, if you so choose, right? Because you got to throw that fucking caveat into it. You could take off your mask for the duration of the flight. It is no longer federally, a judge overturned, yada, yada, yada. And everybody clapping, hey, And I'm sitting there, I drove to Oklahoma twice these last couple of years, right? Every year we do the Modern Warrior Conference, and it's myself, it's Tuan Tom, it's Bill Rapier, it's Tuan Harley Elmore, and incredible training. This year it happens to be in Pennsylvania, but these last 2 years it was in Oklahoma. And rather than take a mask or wear a mask by taking a plane, I drove to Oklahoma. So I am about it, I'm practicing what I preach. Now, understand what I'm saying. if you had to take a plane somewhere and you opted to do that, then you have to do you. That is not what I'm commenting on. I'm not commenting on, oh, you fucking pussies took a plane, you slave-minded, fucking useful idiot. Like, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is somebody cannot rob you of something and then give it back to you, and you act as if you're supposed to say thank you. So all of the people who mandated these masks, fuck those people. None of it was based on real science. None of it was based on any form of study. And at this point, this is, I'm hoping, I'm making some assumptions here, that it is safe to speak this way on YouTube and still keep my account in good standing. But none of these things were based on data. None of these things were based on science. A lot of it was based on, well, how can we leverage the fear of these weak, fragile fucking people in a way that creates a culture that we can now punish the offset from moving forward. So what does that mean? That means how can we create a society, right? A culture, we'll say, a temporary culture, whereby instead of having the burden of proof for why it is we're doing this, being something we have to answer to, have everybody else regulate themselves, and we can come in and collectively, with the people who are on our side, punish the people who are offset from what we're expecting. So yeah, I'll say it now. It's probably safer now to say than any other point, during this fucking nonsense. Like, I never closed my school. I never closed my school. There were 2 weeks where we told everybody that was sort of outside the loop, like, hey, yeah, we're going to take a couple weeks off. Remember the 2 weeks to flatten the curve? Because that was the only logical argument that was presented at any point during this, where even me, who is as, like, I am anti-fucking tyrannical government. Like, I want a small government. I understand government is a necessity in some cases, but by and large, like, fuck you, fuck the government, fuck the agencies, fuck all of that. Even then, it was, this was an unknown thing, and we didn't have enough information to sort of be able to dissect and separate, and like, which is bullshit, which is propaganda, which in the beginning, we didn't have that ability. So for us, if we're in the beginning of that process and we're saying, okay, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, so remember, because the healthcare shouldn't get overwhelmed, like, that was logical. Now, what I did not understand at that point, and will, never fucking forget moving forward, is something that I understand in other applications, which is a very common, phenomenon with people. We understand it here, but same thing, we don't understand there, but it's the same concept. What I didn't understand is when you give tyrants an inch, they want a mile. Any concessions that we make is not a negotiation. It is basically opening the door. It is giving them permission to continue to push. So now we've gotten to the point where the mask mandates are lifted at a federal level. I mean, the world, who has a fraction, different countries of the world are represented in different percentages of codified liberties that we have, right? So it's, we look at and I'm not going to talk specifics. Let's just say country X. We could almost say country X has 0.8% of America's codified freedoms. Country Y has 0.6 of the codified United States freedoms. Like, every country is a sub level of freedom when it comes to what we have codified in the Constitution. How other countries can already be at the point where children obviously aren't fucking being masked. Adults, in workplaces, and like, they're not being masked at any point, by the way, in any of these countries, including this one as of today. You could put on a mask whenever you want. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. But the fact that people are now up in arms that this thing was removed, that this unconstitutional mandate was removed, the fact that they're up in arms about it tells you it had nothing to do with safety at all from the beginning. This is and it's almost to the point where I don't even want to fucking keep saying this. I'm not saying anything that 100 or maybe 1,000 other fucking people aren't saying right now. I have been saying it a lot sooner than and earlier than most of those fucks. But at this point, what I will tell you is, like, there is value to be had here, right? So this morning on the Master Chim email, some of you guys may have read it. I spoke about, what people have gone through during this process and what it is that you've gotten out of it. Like, one of my sayings and my core beliefs is only power from the past. Only power from the past. That means when you're looking at the past, which is an abstraction, it's a story at this point, because once it is gone, it is no longer there. So it is the story you tell yourself of what it is, which we know is going to be limited and highly biased and influenced by our relationship with it. But when we look back, I'm somebody who just advocates for building the most positive, productive, power-driven relationship with that story that we can. So at this point, whatever happened to you, whoever died, whatever business you lost, money you lost, if you've gotten to the point now where you're looking at these last 2 years and you could sort of take inventory, make a list of everything that you've gone through, everything this thing has cost you, maybe not just money wise, but, pressure in general, pain, even depending on the level. At this point, all those things are items on a list. And you get to take these items on that list and you get to sort of populate a story with these items that include these items in a way that is empowering for us moving forward, right? The past is a story. The future is unknown. The future is unknown. You have to understand, if 2 years from now, if this were to happen, and it might happen 6 months from now, people, but let's just say in 2 years from now, it was going to happen that these people decided to lock everything down again and mandate masks and everything. And, you are still going to be in a situation. And these situations are going to offer you certain opportunities, and you're going to make certain choices based on these opportunities. And you get to decide right now, though, what changes you're going to make so that should this arise in the future, you are going to be in a better situation than you were when this happened. What are some examples of that? Well, some people have moved. I have one of my coaching students. He and his missus moved out of New York City, and they moved across the country, and they're in a very, very good living situation with a lot of autonomy. Well, at the beginning of this, it was a rough situation being in New York City, and they lived in the city. Not only are people telling you to get off the streets and you should be home and you should have a reason for being outside of your house. Like, it was so, I would say fortunate for us, it was inconsistent, but it was knocking on the door of some scary shit when it came to the tyranny that the government was sort of nudging itself toward. Well, this one particular coaching student of mine left, and he and his wife are on the side of the country. They got a great spot, great situation. I myself, I live, and I was born and raised in the Bronx. My wife and my 4 kids, we live now in the Poconos in Pennsylvania, and I have a little bit of property. I have a nice size house. I didn't have to lock down. I had the ability to do things that people, or I should say, had I not moved to Pennsylvania, 5-6 years ago, I would be in a completely different situation when this thing popped off. And now, 2 years after this whole nonsense started, I would be in a much different situation than I am now. You have to understand, when I moved my family out of New York, it was at the conclusion of a thought process of considering what type of life I would be able to give my children, where the trajectory of change in New York City was headed, because I got to see all those years ago where we were headed. What type of environment did I want my kids to build a relationship with? What did I want them to think was important, not important? How much pressure did I want to give them to survive as opposed to grow, as an individual? Like these decisions were made a long time ago. It just so happens I couldn't foresee this thing happening, 2 years ago, but it just so happened that doing a little bit of foresight and planning and change years before that put me in a much better situation when it actually happened. And again, what am I an advocate for now? Like, what is the purpose of this talk even? It's when something like this happens again, because they had so much success the first time, don't think that there's not going to be a sequel. When it happens, are you going to be in the same situation? Because seeing these people clapping on the planes, seeing these people, acting like, their masters gave them some table scraps and they're so excited about it. Like, we cannot lose sight of the fact that, number one, people should be in fucking jail based on what had happened to this country over the last 2 years. The inconsistencies, the lack of adherence to some sort of, objective scientific standard. Like, the fact that we got to see bureaucrats creating policy at a level that there is no precedent for, having that piece of shit Fauci smugly go on TV day after day and basically just with no consistency in his own personal life, just expound upon how, we're going to get out of this as a country and how we all need to pitch in and do our job. And, when I see these people clapping for this mask mandate to get removed, I just don't understand why more people aren't pissed off. I don't understand why more people aren't losing their fucking mind. I'm somebody who, when I look at the things that still exist now, I walk into my gym, and I have the, mask-free shirt, and I have the other shirt that says, none of this bullshit worked, quote from data. Like, I have all these button pushing type of shirts that I wear, but that as much as as much a cathartic ritual on my end than it is actually, doing anything productive. I don't think I'm going to change the world, nor would I even, endeavor to do so. But I also know that when I go to my gym, I see young people who are wearing, cloth masks to this day. And when I see them, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't almost dysfunctionally fucking annoyed that these people are allowed to do this without any shaming from the people around them, because that's what happens, and all of these things. There's so many variables at play here. But when you hear this talk about, well, we need to be accepting and tolerant and inclusive, and no, we don't have to do fucking any of that, by the way. What we have to do? We have to follow the law. We have to follow the law. And we only have to follow the law if we're unwilling to pay the consequence for not following the law. That will always be the case. What winds up happening, though, is generations of Americans now have been convinced that we could somehow legislate people into liking one another. That somehow these people can be one law away from being everything everybody else wants them to be. That's not how this country was designed. It's not how it was structured and codified with our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. And I would argue it's not how this country evolved into the powerhouse, the greatest country that's ever existed. We need to be able to coexist with people who disagree on almost everything politically from us, aside from the agreement to abide by the Constitution. I've said for years now, the Constitution is the compromise. The Constitution is the compromise. A plot device used in a lot of books and movies and stuff is, the warring tribes, maybe it's individuals, maybe it's countries, whatever. And even in history, there's precedent for this, having this neutral ground this place where there could be a parlay, a meeting where, all bets are off and we get to sit here, and despite our differences, we could deal with each other under a preset collection of codes or rules, right? Well, that's what the Constitution is. The Constitution is the thing that allows us to sort of agree to this coexistence while still exploring our own individual missions, our own individual destinies and fates and what have you. We get to be ourselves. We get to experience our preferences as individuals under the protection of the Constitution, because that is the thing that allows us to coexist. And what has been codified is we could do that as individuals right up to the point where it starts infringing on other people's ability to do the same thing. People that want to talk about, racism and this, like, shut the fuck up. Hey, that guy's racist. So do something about it. Well, what am I supposed to do? Well, did he break any laws? No. Then what the fuck are you getting upset about it for? How are you letting the thoughts of other people affect how you position yourself to pursue your own goals? Like, how fucking weak, can you be? So we have people now, like good little slaves, clapping because the powers that be, and I understand it was a federal judge, from Florida of all places, who overturned this unconstitutional mandate, but now that I guess the Constitution caught up to the tyrants in this particular case, a bunch of people want to clap. Whereas, sure, it's a good sign that, that everything sort of found its equilibrium constitutionally, I guess, but there were still people who were responsible for the last 2 years who need to see a consequence. If they don't see a consequence, well, how is it that our society is disincentivizing them from doing it again? There are going to be people, you take murder for an example, right? There are going to be people who will never kill another person purposely because that's just who they are. That's on one side of the extreme. The other side is if you have individuals who either by who they are or by who they are in this particular set of circumstances will absolutely fucking kill somebody. Both those extremes have no relationship with the law, because their relationship with killing another person in this particular case transcends any relationship they could have with a law looking to regulate it. Ask somebody who's on the more timid side of that, would you ever kill somebody? No, I would never kill somebody. Why? Because it's wrong. They'll give you a whole bunch of reasons, but they'll never say because it's illegal. The person who is on the extreme side of it, would you ever kill somebody? Well, it depends on what they do. They would have a lot of things to say about it, but without ever commenting on the relationship of them with the law. But there are going to be people in the middle, this sort of gray area, that is moved from one side of the line to the other based on the consequence that they're going to have to pay for the action. So now the thing is, we can't know if an individual is on one side or another side. We try to create a culture whereby more people are going to stay on the side that we collectively want, but we codify it, we regulate it, because we understand there are going to be people who are going to cross that line in certain situations, and we need to disincentivize that. And that disincentivization in the form of law, regulation, is the thing that over time, and as the number of people scale up, we move the trajectory of a society in a specific direction. If people don't pay consequences, then the laws don't matter. If the laws don't matter, then the society is not directing itself in any particular direction where that situation is concerned. What we're saying, if they're not paying any consequences, we're saying is when you are a politician, depending on your individual preference, you are allowed to be tyrannical to US citizens until whatever it is that you do is overturned by a judge. But while you're doing it, you could amass power, collect favors, collect, who knows how many envelopes were passed under tables during this whole thing. It gets to the point where I am, and I am trying to convince more people to join me. It gets to the point where we understand, why wouldn't they be tyrants? We are designing them to be tyrants. Why is it these lifetime politicians are so wealthy? Why is that? I'm not going to sit here and talk about all the inconsistencies and hypocrisies that we see in the media today. But okay, we all understand that. Your one crazy cousin who's got a CNN tattoo on her fucking lesbian arm. Like, we're not talking about her. We're not talking about these people that exist on the fringe of society. We're talking about the people who are now clapping because they were given their freedoms back. Of course, the politicians are going to continue to do this. You see, that there's one response to this that I have some overlap with, right? That I agree with to some extent. This is why we need to vote in more accountable local government. Like that's always going to be part of it, right? Why? Because it's part of the constitutional design of the country. Yeah, that's going to be part of fixing it. Well, what's the other part? The other part is making sure that when people step over the line, they pay a consequence. If there's not a consequence there, this is never going to stop. On the contrary, it is only going to escalate. Think about it. Think about, the people nowadays that see something happening and do nothing. Whether it's somebody getting robbed, or a woman being attacked, maybe a cop, overstepping his authority and doing something, and all these people, stand around and they sit there and they huff and haw about it, but they do nothing. They do fucking nothing. Well, what do you think is going to happen when these people are now bred generation after generation, and one day a representative from the government, the mayor, the governor, somebody more at a local level, just sicks his people on you and says, you know what, take him and his friends, lock them all up. We'll figure out what the charges are. Let's make sure they have the right designation, and we'll be able to hold them. And at what point does that happen? It only happens if the evolution of the politician is not interrupted with hard consequence. Just think about, because I don't want to get too crazy with how I'm talking right now, but I don't want it to be misinterpreted. Let's think about history. In the history of man, let's speculate for a second. What happened to leaders when they were found to be corrupt, when they were found to be acting in their own self-interests and not representing the people who gave them the authority of representation to begin with? Like, what happened to these people throughout history? Well, why did that happen? You could sit here and, have some, dissect the behaviors and the psychology of these different times and superimpose it over the climate of society at that. Like, no. Why did they do it? Because it fucking worked. That's why it was done. That's why these societies enacted these consequences against corrupt politicians, because it worked. Because it disincentivized the next guy from trying to do it. That's how that works. So we live in a society right now that is so weak, is so averse to violence, because ultimately that's what the culprit is. They are so averse to violence that they will make decisions, and I will say subconsciously biased decisions, that just avoid the type of conflict that they have a built-in aversion to. I will let him get his way just because I don't want him to have to suffer through the consequence of it because I can't observe that consequence. Like, it's dysfunctional. It is dysfunctional. You know, I've never done any research on this, but speculating like why throughout history the executioner has always had a hood on. And the reason is, you know, I would say the reason they had a hood on is because, yeah, they want to maintain their anonymity. They don't want any sort of backlash from the people connected to the, you know, the person being executed. They maybe don't want this stigma as being the executioner because that means something. But if you think about it, if we're like, let's be super logical, you know, ultra, you know, uber logical for a second, robots, if you will, for a second. Why is the executioner executing the person? Because the person had done something that society had ruled is worthy of execution. So if we were a completely logical society, there would not be, and again, this is, I'm not saying that this is even possible. I'm just drawing an extreme here. If we were a society of robots, there would be no need to put a hood over the executioner because the execution would not be assigned to that individual because society would have just such an overlapped, comprehensive understanding of why this person is being executed. You know, if somebody were to ask in that type of society, well, who is the executioner? The answer would be, well, society. You know, it's like, well, no, who's the person? It's like, why? Like, well, what's the relevance? Like, well, what would you do that with that information? Because it would be useless in a completely logical society, but that's not the case. Because we understand that we need to even regulate society's ability to destroy itself by being emotional, by being biased, by being, you know, persuaded through propaganda and other means to do things that ultimately aren't in their own best interests. And that's what we're observing today. You know, you have people who have been convinced that they have actually gained something, that they were given something worthy of gratitude by having a mask mandate lifted. It's like, to me, it's almost like, no, let's count the days that the mask mandate is still in place because this is all going to, you know, be a part of how we describe the injustices that need to be that the consequences need to be enacted for. It's like, okay, there was a mask mandate for 800 days, let's say, I don't know. Okay, well, 800 days of doing this thing is going to warrant some sort of consequence. If it was 801, it might be a little bit more, you know, like, to me, that's the only reason that we count the days. That's the only reason. That's the relationship that we build with this. It's like, you didn't give me my fucking freedom back. I've had my freedom this entire time. You've just told me that the consequences for exercising my freedoms have gone down. That's a completely different issue. That's a completely different issue. Let me see some of these comments here. I got to tell you, this StreamYard thing, it's pretty cool. I could do fancy things here. I don't know if this, let's see if this changes it. No, that doesn't happen. That doesn't, no. I guess I need to have something put up. Let me get fancy here for a second. You know, the comments are displayed pretty effectively here. I could see everything off to the side. Let me go through these comments a little bit. You know, all right, what do we got here? My man, Judge Cohen, what's up, brother? All right, Monk. What's up, Monk? He says it's about time the mask man should have never happened. It was about power and control, nothing more. Absolutely. They're happy they were given permission to be free again. You are absolutely right. Mm-hmm. Right. How did we survive the winter of severe illness and death? It's impossible. And by the way, the people who are so weak, and there's a lot of different ways that this weakness happens. I define weakness, remember, as somebody who refuses to climb the ladder of power, not somebody who's on a specific rung. Everybody, could be in their situation, but can decide to be strong at any moment in their lives, just like they could decide to be weak at any moment in their lives. But there are people who, you know, you just look at the coverage of the last president compared to this one, the inconsistencies. The early on in Trump's presidency, what they were saying about his kids and the business dealings. Like, we literally have video of the son smoking crack, like, the son of the president smoking crack right now. And there is no, like, it is not debatable. At this point, it's almost ridiculous that you have to even point it out, that there's no comparison in the level of scrutiny from the media from one president to the next. Well, the people who refuse to acknowledge that are the same people who refuse to acknowledge things like the president and his advisors saying that this past winter was going to be, a winter of severe illness and death. They just get a pass for all these things. It's almost like, hey, good thing it turned out that it wasn't, and that's how it's dismissed by these people who refuse to take accountability for how they act in society. These people that they're always left-leaning, progressive types who want to, they want the laws to sort of regulate feelings and emotions, and it's something that can never happen. But those are the people who are all too willing to just let everybody off, like, because they're not accountable for their own actions. Why would they hold anybody else accountable? Why would they think that accountability is even a factor in how we should manage our society? They obviously don't. All right. Felix Mendez in the house. What's up, brother? Good to see you. All right. No Name says the replacement of the U.S. Constitution started with the Civil Rights Act. Being the UK, have no constitution and a traitor monarch. Right. So the Civil Rights Act, it's one of those things where, so many people have never deep dived into exactly why we shouldn't have gotten the Civil Rights Act, why there were things that needed to be undone, not done at that point in American history. Just like earlier, when we had slaves, there are people who still think there is some sort of a debt to be paid because we had slaves. And no, there's no debt to be paid. The slaves were, slavery was abolished. So anybody that was a slave was now a citizen. But then you have the Jim Crow laws and the separation and segregation, the codified segregation of society, which is always going to infringe upon the rights of some people. So yeah, that needed to be done away with to the point where everybody was equal under the law. There was no need for any other legislation beyond that. In my Mind Killers Power Program video series, one of the mind killers that I articulate is the fulcrum fallacy. And the fulcrum fallacy is somebody who, in the face of having somebody do something to them in, let's just say, representing one direction toward an extreme, they think, well, what we need to do in order to undo this is do something equally as extreme on the other side of it, right? And sort of treating function as a sort of fulcrum and sort of like a scale. Well, they screwed this up, so we have to screw up on the other side, and I guess really it's the, two wrongs don't make a right, but me trying to add a little bit of formula and math to it as I do, we have these people that think we're supposed to go the opposite direction. And it was with that sentiment that so many people were recruited to support this idea of civil rights acts. And obviously, and I'll articulate that just because some people will be so emotional that they'll misinterpret what I just said. Like, obviously, there should not be any codified racism. There should not be anything that is codified to treat somebody based on their race differently as other people. There should be nobody that has more rights than another person under the eyes of the law because of his or her identity. That's obvious. But you don't make a law to make sure that doesn't happen, because all you do is enforce the laws that are already on the books, with the exception of removing any law that separates them from being a citizen. But again, it's hard to convince people to give you money and elect you to office if the bottom line is, you're just telling people they need to be accountable for themselves and they need to stop being emotional and complaining and be productive. Like, you can't do that. Like, that doesn't get you what you want when you're a lifetime politician or somebody looking to leverage propaganda into personal wealth. Brian Wilton, what's up, brother, man? Guillotine was a fancied method by the French, absolutely. And that was on the accountability of corrupt politicians and the like. Without a consequence, if there is something to be gained for it, like, you are incentivizing it, and that's what winds up happening. Without the consequence, you are incentivizing it. And this comes to raising children, managing employees, legislating, a society with law. Like, when it comes to behavior and the attempt to try and influence and control to some extent behavior, if there is a benefit to be had by doing something that you collectively don't want people to do, then you need to make sure that the consequence is either perceived to be or is actually greater than the benefit they would get by doing the thing. It's fucking math. Brian Wilton says this is an interesting proposition that government has the ability to take a human life. And that is a very, very deep topic. It's funny, me, myself, and I'll put this out there, I am not a supporter of the death penalty. But do I think there are things that people do that they should be killed for? Yes, I do. So when I say the death penalty, I'm obviously referring to the relationship of a government, with this act. And listen, I'll be the first one to say, if there's a beyond, the shadow of a doubt level of evidence, the government killing somebody who has done something, an executable offense, I'm not losing any sleep over it. But if we're talking concept and theory, from an intellectual standpoint, I don't think that the government can be held accountable, for fucking that up. And the thing is, I just don't have an answer for how we allow just a private citizen to do it. So basically, it's another one of those things. I'll be the first one to tell you, like, if you kill one of my kids, I'm going to kill you. Like, that's, yeah, but you'll be locked up. I don't care. Like, and I don't think that's so far over the line where people could sort of relate to it. I think it's safe to say that, in a practical, civil conversation. But as soon as we recruit the government into doing these things, it's funny. I watch these shows all the time. I love like detective shows and things like that, and usually ones that were made, at no more recent than a decade ago, right? Because that's when everything started getting woke, and every other fucking character is a homo or lesbian, or like you just don't want to fucking deal with that nonsense. So I watch these older shows, and one of the things that is prevalent in a lot of them, and British and American shows, is this idea of an individual, usually a man, having something done to a family member of his, and how the moral choice, the moral expectation is that he recruits the government to dish out any consequence. And, I always laugh because it's like, yeah, that's not happening. You hear about I think it was in Texas, a guy walked in on somebody molesting his child, and he killed him, and there were no charges, being put against him. It's like, yeah, That's the way that happens. And if we're talking about a line, like that would be on the other line, the other side of the line, where I think everybody would be like, all right, well, yeah, you can't press charges against him for that. And maybe that's a little presumptuous on my part to say everybody, but I think you understand what I mean. I think there's enough meat to the argument that somebody who walks in on a man molesting his child that kills that man in that instant, he should probably be let go. I think there's enough people that agree with that. But there's certainly a discussion to be had where that's concerned, right? All right. All right. Mad Guardian, what's up, brother? He says, Van Isle Mitch, he says, I have to admit it felt good to get back to the gym, but it was bittersweet. No government should have so much power over my ability to be who I am. And there's a lot of people like, let me say this, not that I'm the fucking, the harbinger of fucking truth and morality. But my take on that is, when people started going to the gym and wearing masks and still working out, I was disgusted. I understand that going to the gym means different things for different people. And I think that it is consistent if I were to put that in the same category as people who are flying and wearing a mask. I think that the gym does certain things for people, and going there and being able to wear a mask or having to wear a mask in order to be able to work out, I think the individual needs to assess that on his own, at the time. But at the same time, concurrent to that position was also me thinking that an individual was pretty fucking weak if the only way he can get those physical benefits was by going to a commercial gym and having to wear a mask. Because one of the things that it's not really tracked by most people is every single time we are exposed to somebody wearing a mask in a socially acceptable setting, it normalizes the mask wearing. It becomes more and more normal. Understand that right now there are children who cannot remember a time in school where they did not have a mask on. They probably have them off now, but there are kids who have built their relationship with schooling. Remember, homeschool guy here, so I say this in context. They have built a relationship with schooling such that they're not used to or expecting to see people's faces. Right? Then obviously there's a whole bunch of psychological delays that are going to occur, en masse, because society has had children not being able to interact and being able to read social expressions and build those associations with, in communicating and dealing with other people. Like, yeah, we fucked our kids up as a society over this. Can they get it back? Sure. And I'll be the first one to tell them not to make excuses and to do the work. But again, where is the consequence to be paid? So the guys who were going to the gym way back and were wearing masks in order to do so, like, I just thought it was fucking weak. It's like, dude, go work on something that, that you could do at a fucking a pull-up bar. Like, you can go on fucking YouTube and learn anything about anything. Like, go to the big box stores that were, conveniently fucking open the entire time, and go buy some fucking some pipes and make some fucking structures, and being able to do your own workout is not that fucking hard. You could literally just do something on a floor. You could go on YouTube and search for shadow boxing, instructionals, and like, there are no fucking excuses. Everything is, no, I only know how to get this benefit doing this. So I'm willing to pay the cost of wearing a mask to do this, because in my undeveloped fucking level of independence and power, I cannot manage to do this on my own. So to me, it was like, hey, do what you got to do. If for you it's the reachable rung, then so be it. But holy fuck, that rung is pretty fucking low, So that was my take on that. Steve Grady, what's up, Steve? He says, I'm in Ohio. We just went from being a CCW state to being a constitutional carry state. Everybody's pretty fed up with being told what to do here, except for one's rights in the middle of the cities. Well, that's what winds up happening. Now, here's a little. How much time do I have? I only have a couple of minutes, so maybe I'll leave this as a something you guys can meditate on. Right now, functionally speaking, We are so far down the line, and this isn't like some good news at the end of the video, by the way. We are so far down the spiral downward as a society that when it comes to cities for now, and more of the country will be engulfed by this, category or this label, I think, moving forward. But as it stands right now, when it comes to the cities, because of overpopulation, because of immigration, because of just logistical limitations of policing, the only way cities, here it comes, the only way cities can be policed effectively is by removing constitutional rights from its citizens. If you live in a city right now, you could either have none of your constitutional rights stepped upon, or you can live in a safe society, a functionally safe society. I offer as an example the stop and frisk rule. Fourth Amendment, right? Legal search and seizure. Stop and frisk, stopping somebody and asking them to empty their pockets, regardless of whether or not you had some preset criteria that these people happen to meet, is infringing upon that individual's constitutional rights. I don't give a fuck what anybody says about it, unless you could present to me a logical explanation as to why it's not. Don't tell me, yeah, well, this judge said that, like, save that shit. Without stop and frisk, though, and I'm friends with many police officers in New York City, many of which who are on the street in, and street crime units and over the years, all the things that they've done, like, they will be the first ones to say, we need stop and frisk. And from their perspective, like, hey, I ain't mad at them. Like, yeah, they got to go to work. And if they can't stop anybody they want and check their pockets, it'll probably impede their ability to make the neighborhoods they're working safer. I get it. But this is where we are. And it's not going to get better. It is not going to get better. You individuals who live in cities, your internal tribal formulas need to be tight. They need to be tight. You need to understand how to communicate. You need to understand how to do violence, how to protect your shit. You need to understand the liability that you are exposed to depending on how you move throughout those societies. Like, listen, I'm a city kid. I've been living here 5-6 years. I'm not a fucking mountain man. I'm not a fucking woods like. I'll be the first one to admit it. My kids don't have what I have. And I will never have what they're going to have being raised here. But I understand what it's like to be in the city and actually be a lot more overlapped as an individual. But I also know that when I'm in the city walking around, I'm playing a game. I'm walking through a jungle there. And I know the lions are over there. I know the fucking cheetahs are over there. I know the crocodiles are over there. Like, I know all these things exist. I'm just somebody who was raised in an environment that gives me the ability to navigate it effectively. But this shit ain't happening. This shit ain't happening. 12 pack, what's up? He says, a well-armed society is a polite society. Now, I'll be the first one to say absolutely. I will also add, though, that if we were to give, and I'm not saying this, we shouldn't do this. It's just my opinion, right? My speculation. If we arm every law-abiding citizen in the cities, in 6 months, there's going to be a fraction of the crime that there is right now. But those 6 months are going to be a fucking doozy. All right, guys, I'm going to end it there. I appreciate you guys. I don't know how to use half the things on this fucking dashboard I'm looking at right now, but this was fun. I enjoy doing these, and I appreciate you guys coming and hanging out with me. Do me a favor. If you're not already on my email list, masterchim.com, if you like this, share it to somebody. If you want to subscribe and like the video, do that. If you don't, I don't give a fuck. Either way, I appreciate you spending time with me. All right, guys. I'm going to be doing these a little bit more often. And that was a pretty ambiguous way of being non-committal and when the next one will be. But at least once a week is the plan. All right. I appreciate you guys. I'll talk to you soon. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to motherfucking power.